my name is Natalia Ayisa. I am the lead therapist here at Kairos Wellness Collective, an OCD clinic in Boulder, Colorado. Today we're talking about OCD and specifically how it applies to social media using the example of Snapchat. Big picture, what is OCD? Many people have misconceptions. OCD is an obsession, so that's a fear, that's a core belief, that is a core negative belief, like I am not worthy, I am not safe. So that's the O of the OCD. Then the C is a mental or a physical compulsion. A compulsion is something that you feel like you need to do or think to make the O feel better. So when you have an obsession, you do a compulsion to quote unquote fix it. That is OCD, and it doesn't have to take the form of contamination. It does not have to take the form of organization. It really can span across the entirety of your life and the way that you relate to others. So, how can you be OCD about Snapchat? So Snapchat is an interesting example because it is designed at its core to be addictive. So people who do not have OCD are having some compulsive behavior on the app. All of these social media apps are crafted very carefully in order to be giving us these little dopamine hits and therefore be like mental candy. That is distinct from an individual with OCD in the way that we interact with an app like that. So one example is checking. So a person without OCD will check their Snapchat to see, what's happening, who read their post, who commented, etc. However, a person with OCD will check compulsively. That means even if they are in a situation where it would interrupt their lives and cause distress, they will feel like they need to check in that moment. So that can be driving, in class, like while they're sleeping, they might wake up like, oh my God, I have to check. That is a compulsive checking. So this is similar to sort of back in the day, stove checking or lock checking was a more common form of OCD. That's the I have to make sure, right? And it really doesn't mean that there was a long period of time between the last time you checked. There could be no notification. You could just be checking even though you know what it says. So that's one behavior. Another is seeking reassurance. So a form of relationship OCD is this need to have the people that are in our lives basically soothe our obsessions for us. Like, are you mad at me? Am I pretty? Do you love me? Please help me soothe this anxious feeling right now. In today's day, a lot of people are very aware of mental health and a lot of friends are super supportive. However, that might actually be causing these toxic reassurance seeking cycles to happen between an individual and the people that they care about. And Snapchat is a place for that reassurance seeking. You're waiting for reassurance by people's comments on your Snap stories. You're waiting to see, if somebody responded to you, if they read you, or if they left you unread. All of these things can, for an OCD individual, be reassurance that they are liked. The next manifestation of OCD in Snapchat is rituals. So the word ritual for someone with OCD, it sounds like a big, complicated thing. It really is just a pattern. So a ritual is an OCD person's pattern, like first they clean up their notifications, then they check the red bubbles, then they go into the app, then they go to this story, then they go to this place, etc., etc. So it's a certain routine of what order you have to do things, what time you have to do things. Most of the young people I work with, their nighttime rituals involve their phone. One thing that we work to eliminate when we're working on OCD in Snapchat is the need to access the app at a certain time in a specific way. Body dysmorphia is not the same as OCD. It is a close cousin, related, and often the word we use is comorbid, which means that it is happening at the same time as OCD. So body dysmorphia is when you're overly focused on one part of your body, one aspect of your appearance, and you have a very distorted sense of how that looks to others. So with somebody who has compulsivity on Snapchat, they're going to be checking and looking at images of themselves over and over, as well as images of others in sort of a comparative energy. Now with Snapchat, since there are so many filters on that app, it really amplifies that the experience of body dysmorphia. And fear of missing out, FOMO. Again, a close cousin of OCD, usually an aspect of someone who's experiencing any form of anxiety is often experiencing FOMO. So where these highly sort of strategically crafted Snap stories are doing is that they're giving the sense that other people are living a better, more complete, more exciting life than you are. So for someone with OCD, creating that comparison, checking that comparison, and sort of perseverating or ruminating about other people's lives is a compulsion. Guilt and shame. So a lot of people experience guilt about how much time they spend on Snapchat. A lot of people are will self-identify as unhappy users of the app. So really enjoying it and then also kind of detesting it at the same time. And having these cycles of, oh my God, did I just spend 3 hours on it? So the compulsion is the time spent, but then it's also the guilt cycle about the time spent. So it causes several layers of guilt and shame. Another way that guilt and shame comes into the Snapchat experience and really any social media experience is in worrying that what we posted might be hurtful, what we posted might be racist, or the idea that a photo of us hitting a bong might then end up like following us around for the rest of our lives. Like all of these sort of worst case scenario, catastrophic, cycles of thinking and overthinking can really haunt us in our experience of social media. Compulsive worry. So compulsive worry, separate from I would call neurotypical worry, is worry that literally is always churning in the background. And so you really can't escape compulsive worry. It's almost like this dread cloud that sits with you. And compulsive worry can be about lots of things, but specific to Snapchat, it can be how you're being perceived on that app. This can be a concept that haunts people. Maintaining streaks. This is just a good old-fashioned addictive cycle that someone with OCD just absolutely loves. So the idea of streaks being created in order to keep you engaging with the app every day, for a person with OCD, these streaks come to have almost like a superstitious significance. So if a streak gets broken with a friend, that means the friendship is ruined, catastrophe. There's a sense that streaks can be lucky, that streaks like hold a lot more significance than they actually do, which is zero significance. OCD tricks our brain into over-indexing to things, and streaks are actually one of those things that's very easy to over-index to. This is not unique to Snapchat. I have seen clients get very, very addicted to the compulsion of a Duolingo streak. The concept is what pulls us in, not the actual content of it. Traditionally, this idea of like organizing all of your belongings, that's, what we think of with OCD. Right now, what I see more commonly is that sort of organizational compulsion, but for example, with Snap stories, or having that perfect symmetry, like in a photo, in an image, in the images that are aligned. Even having a sense of a group on Snapchat being the right group, that just right feeling about how things are segmented within the app. Comparing snap scores, that's another compulsion that I see very common among my clients. Again, numbers are a really tricky thing for us with OCD. We tend to have lucky numbers. We tend to, most of us really like even numbers. Most of us attribute a lot of meaning to numbers. Potentially because they are something concrete that we can use to measure. And OCD at its core is a doubting disease. It's a sense of, am I good enough? And I am not sure about myself. So if you can attribute some number, whether it's a grade or a snap score, whatever it is, when we have a number, it feels more solid. I actually really support people continuing to use the applications that give them OCD. As a person that's getting treated for OCD, we do not want to be avoiding our triggers, right? So if Snapchat is a huge trigger of yours, I'm going to have you bring it into session with me and be like, all right, show me all the stuff that drives you nuts, right? And we're going to go through it, and we're actually going to lean into your fears, lean into your triggers, right? For that reason, I also believe that people should continue to be interacting on social media to maintain those bonds with people. Because as individuals with OCD, our biggest tendency is to isolate. When we don't feel safe, we shut down, we shut in. What else can we do to make Snapchat or any social media a healthier habit? The first thing that I strongly recommend for everybody, not just individuals with OCD, but setting time limits on your interaction with the app. I wouldn't be very rigid about this because that can be a compulsion. I can only spend 1 hour and not a minute more, but set general time limits that you enforce with yourself to help stop those sorts of guilt cycles that come from overuse of the app. I also suggest that the time limits be during certain parts of a day. So for example, consider some times like class times or times when you're in therapy, though not if we're doing exposures, but you basically carve out certain parts of your life that Snapchat cannot enter into. So this sort of boundaried approach really helps to create a healthy relationship with the app where you're controlling it rather than the app controlling you. Notifications. I suggest to most of my clients that notifications, all sorts of notifications, are probably destructive for those of us with checking compulsions. Clearing notifications is a common, physical compulsion. I think that notifications basically are just, information overload, and they can cause us to be interacting just out of habit rather than out of desire. So I usually suggest turning off notifications. Triggering accounts. So this one's tricky because on one hand I want my clients to unfollow triggering accounts, and on the other hand I do want them to examine and lean into their triggers. So it can be both. These forms of social media will exist in all sorts of apps. So if it's not Snapchat, it'll become Instagram, it'll become whatever it is for you. So I wouldn't demonize the app in particular. I would just say, what are my behaviors with this app that I want to curtail? Work with your therapist to isolate what are my exact compulsions. And once you eliminate your compulsions on these apps, they become far more enjoyable. And again, you can have a dynamic where you control the app rather than the app, really being able to control you. Social media is a representation of people's existence. Remember that in the same way that a filter might take out flaws, most forms of social media extricate the flaws, the negative, and we're left with this product that doesn't actually represent the ups and downs of true life. If any sort of app is causing mental health distress, just realize that there is so much more that is accessible in this world, and we can always take a break and come back and reassess with a new lens. Thank you so much for listening. If you need any additional support with OCD, feel free to get in touch with my center. Take care.